She said it was just business. I said nothing. But when I hired someone better, she finally understood what free service really costs. It's strange how silence can sound louder than shouting. I remember watching her explain herself that night, her hands trembling, her eyes darting anywhere but mine. He just needed help, she said. You wouldn't understand. And maybe she was right. Back then, I didn't understand. I didn't understand why someone would work for free, risk everything we built, just to feel needed by someone who'd already replaced them once. Now I do. Now I understand perfectly. Because when I brought someone new into my company, someone sharper, smarter, and yes, far more beautiful, I finally saw the same panic in her eyes that I once felt in mine. And that's when I realized, love and loyalty are never free. They always come with a price. When I first met Lena, I didn't have much. Just a small office with flickering lights, a second-hand desk, and a laptop that wheezed every time I opened another spreadsheet. But she didn't seem to care. She looked at me like I was already someone, like she could see the version of me I was still fighting to become. We met at a networking event neither of us wanted to attend. She was there representing her marketing firm, I was trying to convince investors my startup idea wasn't a fantasy. When everyone else brushed past me, she lingered, asked questions, and challenged my pitch. Her confidence was magnetic, sharp and effortless. I remember thinking, if I could get her on my side, I might actually make this work. A few weeks later, she quit her job and joined me. Just like that. No contract. No salary. Just belief. She said she trusted me. That she could see the potential. Those were the best days. Long nights in that cramped office, the smell of burnt coffee mixing with printer ink. She'd sit cross-legged on the floor with her laptop, scribbling marketing ideas on napkins. I'd code until my eyes stung, and when I'd finally look up, she'd be smiling at me through the dim light, whispering, "We're going to make it, Ethan." Sometimes, she'd fall asleep at her desk, her head resting on her folded arms. I'd drape my jacket over her shoulders and keep working, because if someone like her believed in me, I couldn't afford to stop. When the first big client came in, we celebrated with takeout pizza and cheap champagne. I still have that bottle cap on my desk, our first milestone, she called it. We built everything together, piece by piece. She handled branding, social media, and clients. I managed operations and tech. We were a perfect balance, her fire, my patience. She'd talk about big dreams, I'd make them real. And when I finally asked her to marry me, she didn't even let me finish the question. She just said yes, tears in her eyes, laughing through them. For a while, it felt like life had finally evened out. We moved into a small apartment closer to the office. Mornings started with her humming while making coffee, evenings ended with her curled up next to me, whispering plans for our future, how we'd expand, travel, maybe start a family once the company stabilized. I trusted her completely. That's why, when she mentioned Ryan, I didn't think much of it. He's an old friend, she said casually one night while scrolling through her phone. My ex, actually, but it's ancient history. I laughed it off, teasing her. Should I be jealous? She smirked, rolling her eyes. Please. You're the one I'm building an empire with. Ryan, as it turned out, owned a small marketing firm, not as successful as ours, but decent. She said he'd reached out for advice, struggling to keep his business afloat. She assured me it was nothing serious, just professional courtesy. And because I trusted her, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? This was Lena. The woman who'd sacrificed her career to build mine. The one who stayed up with me through sleepless nights and self-doubt. The one who stood beside me when no one else would. So when she started spending a little more time on her phone, or took a few extra calls outside the room, I told myself it was work. When she mentioned meeting an old contact for coffee, I told myself she deserved her own space. I had no reason to doubt her. Still, there were moments. Small things. Like how she'd suddenly changed the subject when I asked about her day. Or how her smile seemed more forced, her laughter slightly delayed, like she was somewhere else in her mind. But love makes you overlook what's obvious. You convince yourself the storm outside isn't headed your way. One evening, we were both working late. She was on a client call, pacing near the window, her voice soft but intense. I brought her a cup of coffee and set it beside her. She barely glanced at me, murmuring, "Thanks, love," before turning back to the conversation. I remember the name she said on the phone before I left the room. Ryan. Just one name. But it stayed with me longer than it should have. At that moment, I didn't know it, but something invisible had started shifting between us. Something subtle but irreversible. Our love story, the one we thought we were writing together, was already being edited by someone else's hand. It started slowly, quiet enough that I almost didn't notice. At first, Lena just seemed busier. More calls. More meetings. More late nights staring at her screen with that deep, furrowed look she got when she was focused. It didn't worry me at first, she'd always been ambitious. It was one of the things I admired most about her. But one night, around midnight, I woke up and found the bed empty. Her laptop's glow spilled under the door from the living room. I walked out, half asleep, thinking maybe she couldn't sleep either. She was on a call. Her voice was soft but animated. She was laughing, really laughing, the way she used to when we'd brainstorm ideas together back in the early days. "Of course, Ryan. You don't have to thank me," she said, chuckling. "It's the least I can do. I know how much this project means to you." The name hung in the air like smoke. I froze. Ryan. That old name, the one that used to mean nothing, suddenly felt heavy. She hadn't heard me. I watched her for a second, her posture relaxed, her smile genuine. It wasn't the polite, professional kind. It was, comfortable. Familiar. When she finally ended the call, I quietly stepped back into the bedroom and pretended to be asleep when she came in. She slid into bed beside me, the faint smell of coffee and perfume trailing with her. I wanted to ask who she'd been talking to, but the words just wouldn't come. The next morning, over breakfast, I asked casually, "Late night again?" She looked up from her phone. "Yeah. I was helping a client with a campaign. He's struggling with his brand positioning." She hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "Ryan," she said finally. "He reached out a few weeks ago. His company's falling apart, and he needed advice." I didn't think it was a big deal. I remember forcing a small smile. "So, you're consulting for free now?" She frowned. "He's not just some random client, Ethan. He's a friend. You know how hard it is to watch someone lose everything they've built." The irony stung, because that's exactly what we'd built together, everything. I wanted to trust her. I really did. But something about the way she said, "friend," felt rehearsed. Over the next few weeks, her schedule changed. She'd leave earlier for meetings, and come home later, claiming Ryan's campaigns were complex and needed her input. When I'd ask if she needed help, she'd say, "No, it's fine. You've got enough on your plate." We used to share everything, client ideas, deadlines, finances, dreams. Now, she guarded her phone like it held state secrets. She'd silence it when I entered the room, flip it face down on the counter. I noticed the little things, the long pauses before answering my questions, the distracted smiles, the way she'd laugh at messages but never explain what was funny. One evening, I caught a glimpse of her phone screen while she was typing. I didn't mean to, but my eyes flicked down as she texted. The message preview read, "Ryan, you always know how to fix things." And her reply, "Old habits die hard." When she realized I was looking, she quickly locked the screen. "Ethan, Please, she sighed, frustration creeping into her tone. You don't have to monitor me. I told you, it's just business. I'm not monitoring you, I said quietly. I just miss us. She looked at me then, really looked, like I'd just said something foolish. You're overthinking it. I'm trying to help someone. That's all. Her words were meant to reassure me, but they landed like dismissal. I tried to focus on work, to drown out the growing doubt. But our rhythm was gone. The spark that once made us unstoppable felt dim, like we were moving out of sync. Even our office felt colder. She'd take calls in private, shutting the door. I'd hear her voice muffled through the glass, professional at times, but other moments, softer. It wasn't flirtatious. It was worse. It was familiar. Like two people who'd once shared a language I was never taught. One Friday night, I decided to surprise her. She'd said she'd be working late, finalizing a campaign. So, I grabbed her favorite dinner, pasta from that small Italian place she loved, and drove to the office. The lights were on in her room. Her back was to the door, phone pressed to her ear. I waited in the hallway, balancing the takeout bag, listening to her laugh. Stop, Ryan, she said between giggles. You always do this, you overthink everything. Just send it to me, and I'll fix it, like always. Like always. That phrase hit harder than I expected. I knocked softly. She spun around, startled, the smile fading from her face. Ethan, hey, what are you doing here? I thought you might be hungry, I said, forcing a smile, lifting the bag. You've been at it for hours. She covered the phone's mic. Yeah, just a second. Then into the phone, I'll call you back later. Her tone changed instantly, flat, irritated. When she hung up, she sighed. Ethan, you didn't have to come all the way here. I told you I'd eat later. I know, I said, setting the bag down on her desk. I just thought it'd be nice. You've been distant lately. Her eyes flickered. I've just been busy. You know how it is. I nodded, but something inside me cracked. Busy. That word had become her shield for everything. We ate in silence, the clink of plastic forks and the hum of the office lights filling the air. She kept checking her phone. I noticed her thumb hovering over Ryan's name, unread messages stacking up. When I finally said goodnight and walked out, I didn't go home right away. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the empty streetlights. It wasn't anger I felt, it was confusion. Sadness. Fear, maybe. How do you confront someone you love when you're not sure if they've actually done something wrong? That night, I started journaling again. Not for answers, just to breathe. I wrote everything down, her late nights, the phone calls, the shift in her tone, the way her laughter sounded lighter when it wasn't directed at me. Every page was a confession I didn't know how to make out loud. I began noticing patterns, how she'd mirror old habits she once had with me, but now used when talking about him. How she'd reference strategies we'd developed together, but now say things like, Ryan's campaign needs it more. I wasn't losing her to another man. I was losing her to a version of herself that still needed him. And that, somehow, was worse. As weeks passed, our conversations thinned to logistics, deadlines, payments, schedules. She started addressing me the way she used to talk to clients, polite, efficient, distant. It wasn't love anymore. It was management. One night, she came home late again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to work, my laptop open but untouched. How was work? I asked quietly. Fine, she said, hanging her coat. Long day. With Ryan? She froze mid-motion, then exhaled sharply. Ethan, are we really doing this again? He's struggling, and I'm helping. I owe him nothing. Stop acting like I'm betraying you. I didn't say you were, I said. But you're not here anymore, Lena. Not really. She rubbed her temples. God, you're impossible sometimes. Why can't you just trust me? The question hurt because I did trust her. Too much. She went to bed without another word, leaving me sitting there, alone with the echo of her frustration. I looked down at my journal, at the pages filled with doubts and half-truths, and I realized something terrifying: trust doesn't vanish all at once. It erodes quietly, grain by grain, until one day you wake up and realize there's nothing left to hold on to. Still, I couldn't let go. Not yet. I closed the journal, turned off the lights, and told myself tomorrow would be better. But deep down, I already knew tomorrow wouldn't change anything. The distance between us wasn't growing anymore, it had already settled in, thick and silent, like a wall neither of us wanted to admit was there. There's a special kind of silence that follows betrayal. It's not loud. It's not even dramatic. It's heavy, like the air itself knows what happened before you do. For me, it began on a Monday morning. I got an email from one of our oldest clients, a mid-size clothing brand we'd helped grow from scratch. The subject line read, "Transitioning accounts." My stomach sank. They thanked us for our excellent work, but explained that they'd decided to move their marketing under a new creative direction led by Ryan Ellis Media. Ryan. It didn't make sense. His company had been on the verge of collapse last quarter. We'd even heard rumors he was considering shutting it down. I clicked the link they attached, his new company website. And that's when I saw it. Our colors. Our slogans. Our entire visual identity, replicated but rebranded under his name. Even the tone of the copy was identical to the one Lena had created for us during our early days. Scrolling down, I found their new campaign portfolio, identical structure, same fonts, even the same client testimonials, slightly rewritten. It was our blueprint, wearing someone else's logo. My pulse roared in my ears. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. But when I saw the creative director listed at the bottom of the page, everything inside me froze. Lena Rivera. Her full name. Her photo. Smiling. Proud. Not a consultant. Not a collaborator. Creative director. That was the title she used to have with me. My chest tightened as I scrolled through the announcement post. Ryan Ellis Media announces new leadership and branding division led by industry visionary Lena Rivera, credited with strategic turnarounds for multiple firms. No mention of me. No mention of the company we built. Just her and him. I called her immediately. She didn't answer. I texted, "We need to talk. Now." She replied 10 minutes later, "Busy. Meeting. Can we talk tonight?" I didn't wait. I drove straight to her office. She looked surprised when I walked in, but only for a second. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" I held up my phone. "What the hell is this?" Her expression flickered between guilt and defiance. "You saw it." "Of course I saw it. You're listed as creative director for Ryan Ellis Media. You used our campaigns, Lena. Our clients. You rebranded his entire company with our framework." She crossed her arms, her tone shifting to defensive calm. Ryan needed help. His business was collapsing. I just offered guidance. Guidance? I repeated, my voice cracking. "You took everything we built and handed it to him for free." She shook her head. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" "He was desperate, Ethan. He had no one. And you have everything. A thriving company, loyal clients, stability. I just wanted to help someone who didn't." I stared at her, stunned. "So you helped him by copying our work? By stealing clients? By putting your name on something we created together?" She exhaled sharply, as if I were being unreasonable. Not everything is about ownership. You can't patent kindness. That line, "you can't patent kindness," lodged itself deep in me. I realized then that her help wasn't about compassion. It was about ego. She wanted to be needed again. She couldn't stand that our success didn't revolve around her anymore. "You call this kindness," I said quietly. "But it looks a lot like betrayal." Her jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." I laughed once, bitter and hollow. "Right. I'm overreacting because the woman I love just handed my competitors the keys to everything I built." She turned away, staring at the window. "You don't understand, Ethan. Ryan and I have history. He believed in me when no one else did. I couldn't just watch him fail." "And I believed in you," I said, my voice trembling now. "But I guess that's not enough anymore." For a moment, she looked at me like she wanted to say something else, something softer. But instead, she whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't think you care whether you did or not." I left before she could reply. By the end of that week, 2 more clients had transferred to Ryan's firm. His company, barely breathing a month ago, was suddenly thriving. And everywhere I looked, people were praising Lena's innovative leadership. Interviews. Posts. Podcasts. She talked about her approach to branding, her creative philosophy. Never our. She started defending Ryan publicly, too. When someone online questioned his company's sudden success, Lena jumped in, claiming their unique strategy had been in development for years. Even some of our clients began to doubt me. "You should see what Ryan's team is doing," one said. "It's bold. Fresh. Fresh." It was like being erased in real time. Everywhere I turned, traces of my work were being claimed by someone else, with Lena's smile stamped on top of it all. One evening, I sat in the dark office alone, staring at the framed photo of us on launch day. Her arm around me, both of us grinning, exhausted but proud. Back then, she'd said, "We're unstoppable together." Now, the same smile looked back at me from another company's banner ad. Same curve of her lips. Same tilt of her head. Same light in her eyes. Only this time, she was standing next to Ryan. It was a photo from his office launch event, one that had been posted on social media by one of their investors. She was holding a champagne glass, laughing. And in that photo, she looked exactly the way she used to look at me. I remember just sitting there. I didn't throw the photo. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just stared at it until my eyes burned. That's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just drains you quietly until there's nothing left to feel. I closed my laptop, grabbed my jacket, and walked out. When I reached our apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. The place still smelled like her perfume, something soft and floral that lingered in the air like a memory that refused to leave. Her shoes were by the door. Her jacket on the chair. All the ordinary pieces of a shared life that suddenly felt like props from a story that wasn't mine anymore. I took my key off my ring and set it on the counter. It made a small metallic sound as it hit the wood. Final. I looked around once more. The place that had once been ours now felt like a stranger's home. She wasn't there, but her voice echoed in my mind, "He needed help. You have everything." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe this wasn't about betrayal but compassion. But the truth was, she hadn't done it for him. She'd done it for herself. Because in our world, kindness was just another way to feed control. And as I walked out of that apartment for the last time, I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. She didn't destroy me out of malice. She did it because she needed to feel like the savior again. And if saving someone else meant sinking me, then so be it. That night, I drove without a destination. Just me, the road, and the sound of my thoughts catching up. There was no rage left, just clarity. A cold, steady kind of understanding. I wasn't going to beg her to come back. I wasn't going to fight for something that had already chosen to leave. People like Lena didn't break things accidentally. They calculated their impact and called it compassion. And me? I was done being the casualty of someone else's kindness. I would rebuild. Not to win her back. Not to compete with Ryan. But to remind myself what I could become, without her. So I drove until the city lights faded behind me, until the night air felt new again, and whispered to myself, almost like a vow. I won't destroy her. I'll outgrow her. And that, I knew, would hurt her far more than revenge ever could. Months became my metronome. I let the calendar rule me, no nights wasted on wine or apologies, no empty promises to myself. I worked like a man rebuilding a wall that had been dismantled stone by stone. Only this time, I planned every brick. I moved the office. Same city, new floor, cleaner light, glass that didn't creak when cold air hit it. I replaced the faded poster of our first pitch with a sleek logo I designed in a single midnight burst of clarity. No sentimentality. No echoes. I hired people with a checklist of strengths, not charm, not history, not family ties. Skill. Discretion. Hunger. Ava walked in on a Tuesday with a resume that read like 2 lives in one, boutique agency pedigree, a head start at a hedge fund's analytics desk, and a portfolio of brand turnarounds that made my chest tighten in a way Lena's accolades never could. Ethan Cross, she asked, extending a hand. Her voice was even, her smile measured. She was all angles and warm light, sharp cheekbones, hair cut blunt around her jaw, the kind of face the camera eats and still wants more. But it was the eyes that stayed with me, direct, unflinching, curious. Not curious in the way a lover is curious, curious in the way a strategist studies a chessboard. You're early, I said. Time zones, she shrugged. Or an eagerness you created. It was a quip. It was also a test. She passed both. We started small. Ava streamlined our CRM in a week, trimming obsolete pipelines and building dashboards that made the ugly truth about our churn impossible to ignore. She had an eye for efficiency and a taste for clarity. She learned my silence. When I spoke, she built on it. When I didn't, she filled the space with results. Her presence changed the office cadence. No drama. No late-night fretting. Just metrics and progress, coffee that didn't taste burnt, and a calendar that actually closed on time. Clients who'd once taken our calls out of habit started answering with a different tone, they sounded intrigued, not obliged. Who is she? Our junior account manager asked after a particularly good win. She doesn't play the usual games. Neither do I said. She's good. Ava didn't flirt. She negotiated. She listened twice as much as she talked. And when she did talk, when she pitched or when she rewrote a brand deck, it landed hard and clean. Within 4 months, revenue was no longer a worry. We were selective again. We stopped chasing every lead and started curating clients whose values matched our new direction: integrity, measurable outcomes, long-term thinking. Meanwhile, rumors swirled about Ryan and Lena. At first they were whispers, bad hires, cash flow mismanagement, but they grew teeth. Investors complained of poor onboarding and missed KPIs. A designer quit mid-project. A senior strategist left in a public spat about creative theft. The press picked up the scent of discord. And then, the part that hurt my ego more than my business, people began to say Lena looked smaller in photos. Not literally, but in energy. She wasn't the one calling the shots, she was defending choices that were clearly not hers. She'd sat on a throne she hadn't built and was surprised it splintered. I heard it on calls when I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I heard it in the industry grapevine. She's unappreciated, a mutual friend said over drinks I didn't want to drink. She gave them everything and they handed her scraps. A part of me felt nothing. Another part, colder and more precise, catalogued this as an opportunity. Ava watched and listened. She always watched and listened. "One thing people don't do anymore," she said one evening while we worked late, a smear of sodium lights outside our windows, "is to trust the old way of doing things. They want an edge, clean operations, and someone who knows how to protect them from people who abuse trust." "People like Lena," I said. "People who profit from other people's labor," she corrected. Her shorthand was merciless and effective. She proposed a campaign to reposition our brand as the anti-fraud boutique, ethical growth for ambitious companies. It was sharp, tasteful, and it attracted attention, enough to make Ryan's investors nervous. But Ava wasn't just streamlining and rebranding. She had a second skill set that revealed itself slowly, a talent for reading people and bending situations without bullying them. Not manipulation for the sake of cruelty, manipulation like surgical precision. She suggested meetings cloaked as partnership talks, white-labeled collaborations designed to lower defenses and invite openness. "If you want someone to reveal everything," she said, "don't make them feel like a suspect." The plan formed like slow ice. We would create a fake boutique project, Brook and Hale, a brand identity studio with an old-money aesthetic that played well to Ryan's vanity. Brook and Hale would look like a soft, exclusive revival, whisper client list, luxury positioning, friends in high places. I signed the LLC paperwork under a shell name. Ava built a website that looked like it had been quietly curated by collectors. We planted digital breadcrumbs, a LinkedIn profile, faux endorsements, a private invite-only email with a velvet-toned offer for strategic revitalization. Then we reached out. Ava sent a private, flattering note to Ryan, an offer to discuss a niche collaboration. Not publicly. Not a press release. A whisper. "Tell him we admire what they did last quarter," she wrote, composing the message in my office while I hovered over the keyboard. "Make him feel seen." He responded in hours. Pride trumped suspicion when it stroked. We set up a meeting. Ava would be the face. I would stay in the wings, quiet and available. Ryan wanted the in-person demo. He wanted to show off. He wanted to believe someone from the right circles had noticed. Lena, predictably, was the gatekeeper. Her name opened doors for him like a master key. Ava met him in a neutral space, a conference room in a private co-working club that smelled of leather and citrus. She wore a navy suit and no jewelry. She carried a tablet that presented Brook and Hale's secret model beautifully. The meeting lasted 3 hours. I didn't attend, but I had the transcript. Ava had a recorder, one of those discreet apps she swore by. She let him talk. She laughed when it was strategic, she mirrored it when he boasted. She asked about third-party vendors, about contract clauses, about cash flow cushions. Ryan, eager to impress and eager to be seen as a genius, gave more than he meant to. He mentioned a shell game of client invoicing. He bragged, in a way only a man trying to sound bigger than his numbers would, about redirecting certain premium accounts under the guise of creative incubation. Ava didn't push, she collected. "They're sloppy," she told me later, when we debriefed. But proud. Pride makes people reckless. After the meeting, Ryan wanted to pilot a joint offering. He wanted to test a rebranding funnel with Brook and Hale as the behind-the-scenes curation. He hand-delivered campaign data, creative calendars, suppressed A/B test results, client contact lists, thinking it was a demonstration of trust. He wanted to bask in the validation of a curated boutique wanting to elevate his assets. He gave us too much. He gave us his skeletons wrapped in silk. We cloned the documents into a secure, offline server. Ava ran them through a forensic filter, metadata, timestamps, file hashes. She cross-referenced the campaign strategies with our archives. The overlaps were obvious and ugly. There were lines of copy that matched ours verbatim, art direction that mirrored our mood boards, even proprietary templates we'd only shown to a handful of clients. It was theft, not inspiration. But theft alone wasn't a paper trail that would topple their house. We needed leverage, something with teeth. We dug deeper. Ava, with a background in analytics, found inconsistencies in Ryan's billing. Certain premium services billed under different company names. Invoices with identical dates to campaigns posted to clients who had claimed otherwise. A pattern of kickbacks masked as vendor fees. We traced payments through a tangle of LLCs, into accounts that didn't match public records. She found an internal memo, an ugly bit of evidence, where a Ryan executive had instructed a junior to move payment through Hale Consulting if the client asks. It was sloppy, but it read like admission. This was the part that required restraint. I am not, by nature, a vindictive man. I'm precise. And precision requires patience. We did not burn everything in a single tweet. We built a dossier. The dossier was clean. It contained timestamps proving document reuse, bank trails showing suspicious transfers, email threads where Lena's name appeared in context of campaign handoffs, and a handful of direct messages where Lena casually remarked that the clients will love the new direction, they won't miss the old guard. There was a small sting in seeing Lena typed into legal-sounding sentences, her handwriting translated into corporate culpability. There was also a recognition, for all her rhetoric about helping others, she'd explicitly directed the transfer of client leads. She had knowingly weaponized our shared work. We tested the dossier. We ran it by a lawyer with a reputation for discretion. He said the evidence was compelling and actionable. He suggested a slow approach, private outreach to key investors, a controlled disclosure to a regulatory body, and, if necessary, a strategic leak timed for maximum market consequence. Ava had her own plan for the public angle, an exposé that would be less about humiliation and more about accountability. Make it factual, she said. Make it impossible for them to spin. No melodrama. Just the truth, in cold type, and watch the narrative reframe. There were setbacks. A client backtracked after a confusing memo. A piece of evidence lost its provenance because a server log had been overwritten. We lost a week of momentum when a vendor we thought was reliable went dark. Each setback felt like a small betrayal of my patience. But Ava treated them like calibration issues, fixable, not fatal. I kept journaling. My entries became less about sorrow and more about tactics, names, dates, the legalese of contracts. I catalogued the moral line I was walking and drew it with a steady hand. I reminded myself, often, that this was not about revenge in the petty sense. This was about restoring balance, exposing a system that allowed people to take what wasn't theirs and profit from silence. I no longer hated them. Hatred burns and consumes. What I felt was narrower, the desire for justice, as antiseptic as bleach. I wanted the ledger to be true again. I wanted the people who trusted me to know the truth. I wanted Lena to see, in concrete terms, the cost of misplaying loyalty under the guise of kindness. When Ava leaned back in her chair one night and said, "We can make this clean," I believed her. I believed in the meticulous coldness of the plan. I believed in the slow, inevitable arithmetic of accountability. We were no longer two people in love and collapsing. We were two professionals with a dossier. We were ready to turn the whisper into a verdict. The morning of the conference felt sterile, too clean, too bright. The kind of day that didn't yet know it was about to ruin someone. Ryan's firm had booked the Grand Meridian Ballroom for their Innovation in Branding Summit, an industry event meant to showcase thought leadership and attract fresh investors. They'd sent invites weeks before, assuming I'd decline. I didn't. Ava made sure my name appeared quietly on the guest list under Observer, with a small, non-committal RSVP. Everything about the event screamed ambition: crystal lighting, glass panels, tall banners with minimalist taglines. The irony was thick enough to taste. Ryan stood near the stage, dressed in a slate-gray suit that probably cost as much as one of my early campaign budgets. His confidence radiated, the same smug ease that once made investors nod along before he even spoke. Lena was beside him, poised, immaculate, her expression tight but practiced. She wore white, always white, as though purity were something you could declare by color alone. Ava and I stood near the back of the room. She had her tablet in hand, her hair tied neatly, expression unreadable. She whispered, "We're synced. His deck's loaded on the cloud, right where he left it." I nodded. "You're sure it'll work?" She didn't even look up. He made the mistake of naming files with his company initials. It's like leaving the door open and asking someone to admire the furniture. When the lights dimmed, the stage came alive with polite applause. Ryan began his presentation, his usual rhythm, confident, performative, charming. He thanked his team. He thanked Lena. He started clicking through slides that looked expensive, filled with buzzwords and market projections. It was slide 8 that changed everything. A flash of white noise appeared for half a second, barely noticeable, and then, click, the deck shifted. The title that appeared wasn't one of his slogans. It read, "Creative Ethics and Accountability, a Case Study." He froze. The audience leaned forward, confused. I saw his finger hesitate over the clicker. Then Ava's script took over. The next slide showed an email header, from Lena Ward to Ryan Hale. Subject, lead transfers for campaign crossover. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Ryan stammered something, "That's not, there seems to be a mistake." The next slide hit. Financial statements, time-stamped and annotated, began flashing, each one marked with overlapping company accounts, misfiled payments, repeated invoice IDs. Red circles highlighted inconsistencies. Underneath, a caption read, "Duplicate invoice patterns between Hale Creative and Cross and Ward Strategies, formerly pending litigation." Gasps. Actual gasps. Someone from the audience said, "Are these real?" Ryan was sweating now. Lena's face had gone completely pale. Her hand reached for the clicker, but the remote was already overridden. Ava's programming locked it. Another slide, side-by-side screenshots of ad campaigns, identical visuals, identical taglines. One stamped with my company's brand name from 3 years ago. Then came the kill shot, metadata readouts. The timestamp showed the campaigns had originated from my systems, the creative templates last modified by L. Ward. Lena stepped forward, her voice breaking through the stunned quiet. "Stop this. This isn't part of." But the projector didn't care about human pleas. The next file was a memo from Ryan himself, "Keep the old files hidden. If Ethan ever comes asking, we'll call it cross-research." A few people laughed. It wasn't cruel laughter, it was disbelief, the laughter of people watching a structure collapse in slow motion. By then, security staff were moving toward the tech booth. But it was too late. The deck autoplayed the final slide, a clean, minimal white screen with text that read, "Integrity isn't a slogan. It's an audit." And beneath it, the logo of Brooke and Hale, our fake studio. The lights came up. Silence. Then whispers. Then phones came out. The sound of cameras clicking and screens recording filled the hall. Ryan's jaw worked like a man searching for air underwater. Lena looked at him, not angry, not pleading. Just empty. She knew. I could see the exact second she realized the orchestration. The cloud leaked. The anonymous emails that had pinged their investors earlier that morning. The accidentally uploaded presentation that now played across every industry group chat in the city. Their company didn't just fall, it imploded. By evening, 3 major investors had pulled out. 2 clients terminated contracts citing ethical breach. Journalists flooded their inboxes with requests for comment. The website went offline within 12 hours. It was all too clean. That night, I sat in my office, watching the numbers shift on the news ticker. Ava stood beside me, her reflection faint in the glass. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. "It's done," she said softly. "Almost," I murmured. Because I knew Lena would come. She came the next day. No appointment, no pretense. Just walked into the lobby, ignoring the receptionist, her heels clicking against the marble-like punctuation. I stood as she entered my office. Her face was a wreck of anger and exhaustion. Mascara smudged, hair tied carelessly. She looked smaller, like someone stripped of armor. "Was all this revenge worth it?" she asked, voice trembling. Her question didn't carry accusation, it carried fatigue. The kind that comes from realizing you've been the architect of your own ruin. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded. "No," I said after a moment. "Revenge never is." She exhaled, almost relief, almost disbelief. "But," I continued, "watching someone competent finish what you started?" I let the silence stretch. "Absolutely." Her eyes darted toward the door as it opened. Ava walked in, crisp white blouse, tablet in hand, the scent of bergamot trailing behind her. She paused when she saw Lena, offering only a polite nod. "Sorry to interrupt," Ava said evenly. "Ethan, the investors from Tokyo confirmed for next week. I've sent the updated projections to your inbox." "Thank you," I said, not breaking eye contact with Lena. Ava turned to leave, but not before placing a folder on the desk. A subtle gesture. Controlled. Confidence. Lena's gaze followed her, the precision in Ava's step, the effortless composure. "She's your new," Lena's voice trailed off, the words curdling on her tongue. I didn't answer. She laughed then, a brittle, humorless sound. "So that's it? You replace me, ruin me, and call it balance?" I looked at her, really looked. This was the woman who once fell asleep beside me over spreadsheets and startup dreams. The woman who said, "We," like it was a vow. "No, Lena," I said quietly. "Balance isn't replaced. It's correct." Her lips parted to argue, but nothing came. For the first time, she didn't have a speech. She turned, her reflection flashing briefly in the glass wall before vanishing through the door. When she was gone, Ava looked back through the glass from her desk. Our eyes met briefly. No smile. Just understanding. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware, uncaring, the way it always had. I returned to my computer, opening the folder Ava had left. Inside were performance graphs, growth forecasts, contracts waiting for signature. The new world. Clean, efficient, unsentimental. My hands hovered over the keyboard for a moment, and I found myself whispering words I hadn't said in months. "Thank you," I murmured, not to Ava, not to anyone. Just into the air, to the silence that had taught me patience. For a long time, I'd thought revenge was about payback. But standing there, with the hum of a company reborn and the ghost of the old one buried, I realized it wasn't that. It was about control. Taking back what someone thought they could take from you, and doing it without ever raising your voice. In the end, Lena was right about one thing. Some things you do for free. Justice just happened to be one of them. Night falls differently when you've built something out of ashes. The city lights don't blink, they burn steady, like quiet witnesses to every decision you made while no one was watching. I sat in my office, the blinds half open, watching headlights crawl along the streets below. The skyline reflected off the glass like a ghost version of itself, perfect, untouchable, distant. My glass of whiskey sat untouched beside the keyboard, catching the soft blue hue of the monitor. Ava had already left for the night. She always worked late, but never for a reason. She understood boundaries, understood that success didn't mean servitude. That was the difference. I thought about Lena sometimes, not out of longing, but out of study. People like her never set out to destroy, they just overestimate their own virtue. She gave away our work, our trust, to prove she was indispensable. She thought selflessness was power. But power, I learned, isn't about sacrifice, it's about strategy. She gave her ex free work to feel powerful, I murmured to the glass reflection staring back at me. I gave mine a job title to feel free. The reflection smiled faintly. The difference? Mine earned it. Somewhere in the distance, the city pulsed with quiet ambition, the same pulse that once kept me up at night, wondering if love and loyalty could coexist with hunger. I know the answer now. Loyalty, like currency, only holds value when it's backed by proof. I swirled the whiskey once, let it rest, and leaned back in my chair. Turns out, I whispered, loyalty isn't free, it's an investment. The city lights flickered against the window, as if nodding in agreement. She just misread the market.